You think just when you nail your trim, then gas bubble slides into your boots and your fins point at the sky. If that sounds familiar, this video is for those dry suit divers or curious wetsuit divers out there who want calm, predictable control in a dry suit. This isn't how to dive in a dry suit crash course, but these are tips I felt I needed after getting dry suit certified. I'm Don, and today we'll figure out how to pin that bubble in your torso, vent cleanly on ascent, and stay warm without turning your suit into a balloon. Posture beats power kicks, and small, early moves beat big, late dumps. Let's dive in. Air in your dry suit behaves like any gas bubble and runs to the highest position to the surface. If your chest and legs are flat, it gathers in your torso and everything feels calm. If your feet drift higher in what you would call negative trim, it races to your boots and your fins want to point up whether you mean it or not. While on the other end, if your upper torso is raised and all the gas comes up, then you go into positive trim. If your dump valve is an auto open, then you lose all your gas and probably get cold pretty fast. It feels like the suit took over and perhaps has a mind of its own. But what really happened is bubbles migrated out of that stable zone. The stable zone is near the horizontal with a flat torso, a slightly bent knee, and hips level, so that bubbles rest in your core. This is called also neutral trim. That position gives you the most predictable control because the bubble has nowhere better to go and can gather more reasonably and evenly distribute. It's also worth noting a dry suit often needs more lead than a wetsuit because of undergarment loft and also suit volume, but it can depend on your setup, such as if you have a neoprene or a trilaminate dry suit. One pro tip is that diving steel cylinders with a dry suit in cold water often helps keep weight more manageable. But either way, do a buoyancy check in shallow water and aim to be neutral, about 5 meters or 15 feet with near empty cylinder and only minimal if no suit in your dry suit or BCD. If you're overweighted, you will carry a larger bubble to offset it and make managing all that gas worse. And here's where I generally like to think of the dry suit as only the place where you add gas into to relieve dry suit squeeze and stay warm. Don't add gas in there for buoyancy, as in general, it's harder to manage. Now, I know that statement's going to rub some people the wrong way. So if you're an experienced diver who already has good trim and can manage that gas well, some experienced divers would like to use more gas in their dry suit and thus use their dry suit a little bit for buoyancy control and shut their auto off and just close that valve and basically dump valve manually only as needed to get gas out of the dry suit. And if that's you and you have comfortable control, that's great. But for new divers, I would recommend opening that thing all the way and using your BCD for primarily buoyancy control. And that is what the BCD is designed for. It helps keep gas in a very specific place on your back. And it distributes that gas for optimizing trim and buoyancy. And so using that primarily for buoyancy makes a lot of sense to me. And if things do go wrong, it's generally easier to let gas out of your BCD than your dry suit. So at least starting off, I'd recommend adding only gas to your dry suit to relieve that squeeze and to stay warm. But again, I also know some instructors and agencies might teach that specific way. The most important thing here is that you feel comfortable and confident with whatever strategy you go with. But generally, in my stance, use your BCD for buoyancy control and you'll find it much easier to control the gas bubbles not distributed all over your body. And with that, if you're still having a tough time, before you blame skill alone, confirm your suit fit and boots because excessive volume and floppy legs amplify bubble shifts. Ankle weights and leg gaiters can mask problems in the short term and introduce other ones. So treat them as a last resort after dialing posture, gaiters, and weight placement. It's generally more important to manage your trim and that suit's gas bubble with skill. Fin choice can matter because very negative fins lift your legs less and can help you if you're chronically foot light. But again, it could be a crutch. You can first try shifting your cylinder position and work on your posture more before resorting to heavier fins. However, very positive fins can exaggerate that foot light problems and invite bubble creep toward boots. So at least for cold water, I wouldn't recommend positive buoyancy fins. So either neutral or slightly negative and potentially very negative depending on your setup. You got to think of all this as managing a traveling bubble instead of fighting that misbehaving suit. Oh, and by the way, if you're struggling with posture, I did make a video that deep dives trim issues which might help with this issue in more detail. You can check it out in the link above. Okay, but what if gas collects where you don't want it? I have a 3-step fix, but it's not a barrel roll. I know barrel roll is kind of taught in some Drysuit classes, but I'm not going to suggest that here. But it does require you to have decent trim skills, so it might be harder to manage this if you haven't got a feel for flat trim yet. Step 1. Stop kicking so you stop adding momentum and masking the issue and try to hover. You'll start to feel which part of the body that has collected extra gas. Often the legs. Step 2. Reshape your body in the opposite direction of the excess gas so the bubble rolls back to the other direction, gently lifting that part of the body. If it's the legs, for example, you drop your legs so you are straight and lift your upper torso. Sometimes for me, it helps to lift the upper torso and get more of the gas from my core up, and then I can straighten my legs down and get extra gas from the legs all the way up as well. This puts me in positive trim, but now my gas is collected in one place. Step 3. If you feel that there's too much gas in the suit, you can vent manually or turn it on the auto open and let it vent out automatically by lifting your arm. As you ascend, remember, gas expands, so you routinely do this exercise as you ascend. Every 3 meters or 10 feet is what I would recommend ascending. Also, small moves beat big kicks because posture control where the bubbles go. If you're constantly dropping your knees and kicking hard, you might be pushing and allowing more of that gas bubble to travel to your legs. If you respond to instability by adding gas or ascending, you make the bubble larger and tire yourself out without solving the cause. The toughest part, especially for me, when I was improving this skill, was always staying calm. So it can be easier practicing these skills in a pool or in the shallows. It definitely can feel a bit alarming when your legs are literally dragging you up to the surface. So it's better to start practicing this trim and redistribution skill shallow, where there isn't much of a suit squeeze issue and you can just add some gas to your dry suit and feel it roll around. You can just play with your trim and posture and just move that gas bubble up and down your suit. And more importantly, feel how long it takes to collect in your chest and upper body or in your legs. You kind of want to feel a beat, a kind of a rhythm of how long it takes for all that gas to collect. For me, it's around 5 to 6 seconds. It's a good amount of time. So if you're just quickly going into positive, trying to hit that dump valve, trying to let gas out, you're going to only release a very small fraction of what you want. Sometimes, just like your BCD, you have to go positive, let the gas collect like for 5 seconds, and then let it out. Or just auto open, either way. Auto open and raise the arm. You want to practice slow and subtle movements to feel the gas gather and move through the suit. If you get too much gas, raise your arm, bend above your head, and move gas to your upper torso. What's cool is while you're releasing it, you'll start feeling your suit compress and start hugging your skin more, which will start feeling cold as well, so you don't want to let all that gas in. You want some gas to stay in there, as that's going to allow you to keep warm as well. And again, for me, starting off, it was always easier just to keep the vent open. Honestly, even today, I often just keep the vent open and I rely on my trim to distribute the gas so I don't dump gas out my auto dump easily. If I'm going to be at a certain depth for let's say 10-15 minutes, I might close it add some gas in that I'm feeling comfortable with, and I'll turn it to auto open when I know it's time to start ascending, because I don't want to have to worry about it. And as that gas is expanding, I want to just be able to easily go positive trim, wait for it, and basically just let it dump out naturally as I'm going into positive trim. And then while I'm letting it dump out, then I will straighten my legs and let that come up as well. And it's usually for like 5 to 6 seconds, and that's sufficient. Then I'll go back into trim, and there will still be usually a decent amount of gas still in the suit collected in other areas that will redistribute and will continue to expand as I ascend more. So you often have to repeat this over and over, like every 3 to 10 feet. So you'll just ritually do it, and you don't want it to basically get so big that it starts pulling you up. Because remember, your dry suit is much bigger than your BCD, so it has capacity for having a lot more gas in there and a lot more positive buoyancy. So you want to get in the habit of basically letting that gas out and redistributing it before it becomes a big problem. And at least starting off, until you feel more confident with that gas management, I'd recommend just keeping it open. Eventually, you'll start to experience how little motion it takes to move that bubble around. You stop overcorrecting and start steering it like a slow marble on a tilted bowl. That is the mindset shift that turns the suit from a fight into a tool. Now, let's take that stable bubble and climb without racing upward. An uncontrolled ascent from expanding suit gas is the biggest early mistake in dry suit diving, which is why I recommend starting in those shallower waters until you get more confident and comfortable, basically letting gas out and redistributing that gas in your dry suit. The deeper you go, the more gas you'll have to get rid of as you're ascending. Most new divers often wait too long to vent and then try to fin down while the gas keeps expanding. The smart move is early small venting while deeper, because a small release has more effect before the bubble grows. Posture makes venting possible because the gas must reach the exhaust before it can leave. On ascent, the highest point should be your upper torso and that valve shoulders rather than your boots. Get into a nice hover without finning. Lift your chest slightly into that positive trim. Keep your knees just below your torso, legs straight as soon as you can get them straight, and bring that valve arm a little bit higher. As you do this, you will feel the bubble arrive at the valve and hear or sense a quiet bleeding. You'll hear it start bubbling out, and you can even feel some of your suit starting to compress. You can eventually practice doing this as a drill with valve close even. Get in the habit of pressing your dump valve for manual releases. It works well enough with the valve auto open though as well. Remember that the valve cannot dump what it cannot reach, so posture first and the button second. Also, if you're fairly stable and have a flat trim, gas generally doesn't escape through your arm easily, so auto dump works well enough as long as you're keeping good trim. That's why I always say the trick of dry suit diving is that more advanced skill that often feels pretty hard, especially for new divers, even in a wetsuit, and that is getting good trim. But the dry suit will punish you for not having good trim. Also, your fins are for traveling around the water, not for holding depth against that expanding bubble. If you dump frequently and often, it keeps that bubble small and manageable without needing to kick to stay down. You shouldn't have to kick to stay down. If you're doing that, you've let the bubble get too big. A good benchmark is being able to rise at a target rate without finning, because posture and valve angles are doing the work. Breathing can move you a surprising amount near the surface, so keep your exhale steady and avoid big lung volume swings when you are fine-tuning your buoyancy in your suit. Generally, descending is piece of cake. All you have to do is make sure you hit that button every now and then to prevent too much squeeze, and that's it. And keeping the gas distributed so that you stay warm. But ascending is where it becomes tricky. So whenever you're raising in depth, that's when you start needing to think, I need to start letting gas out. But you have two buoyancy control devices, your dry suit and your BCD. And so generally, if you're using your BCD primarily for buoyancy, I will go into negative trim and let the gas collect on the bottom side and use the rear dump valve with one quick tug, and that will basically put me in neutral buoyancy, generally. And now that I'm in neutral buoyancy, I know that I'm going to continue to ascend, so I will then flip to positive trim, wait that 5 to 6 seconds, and around second 3, raise that arm, start letting it auto dump, and I'll hear it, and then I'll straighten my legs shortly after to get that gas out of my legs as well. By second 6 or 7, I'm usually in a pretty good spot. So I'll go back into neutral trim and continue to ascend with my lungs, but not by breathing in too much. You don't want to like take a big gasp of air with full lung. That's how you get lung overexpansion. But just steady breathing with slightly more positive, with slightly longer inhalations, and you'll start seeing you're ascending slowly. And so after maybe 10 feet or 3 meters, you gotta do the whole cycle again. If you have a line, you can always use it as a reference rather than a crutch as well. Getting used to ascending takes some time and practice. Practice that drill I just talked about. It usually doesn't take more than 10 to 15 seconds as you're ascending every 10 feet or 3 meters. You can practice it by going to shallow water with the auto dump fully open, starting around 6 meters or 20 feet and ascending very slowly with your breathing only, no fins. Make sure you control buoyancy with your buoyancy control device or your BCD first. Dump air out of that rear dump valve, and then after go into positive trim and let the gas out of your dry suit. You shouldn't let so much gas out now that you're negative. So it might take a little bit of practice and timing to find that sweet spot. But from there, once you've basically hit really good neutral then, and you don't have that much gas in your dry suit, then you can just continue breathing upwards. And you can practice this every 1.5 meter or 5 feet, all the way to the surface with a very calm and controlled ascent. And one nice thing about using your BCD for buoyancy control is generally it'll have more gas in it, and that's going to affect your buoyancy more than letting air out of your dry suit. Ideally, if you're just using your dry suit for that warmth, then when you basically let gas out, it shouldn't affect your buoyancy too greatly and significantly. So something to keep in mind. When you're starting to get the hang of it, you can repeat the same exercise at slightly different angles. Then again, from a slightly different starting depth. Maybe you can go a little bit deeper, like 10 meters or 33 feet. If gas starts sneaking into your boots during ascent, stop the ascent and fix it with the same sequence we discussed earlier. While doing this practice, if a runaway ascent truly starts, flare to increase drag, exhale normally, and hold your airway open. Dump the air from your BCD and try to keep your posture oriented so that you're getting gas out of the suit as well. While doing these drills, stay shallow so you're having minimal nitrogen buildup. And because we're doing these drills, and because dry suits can be a little bit finicky when you're starting to get used to them, that's why you should stay a bit more shallow when practicing, because you'll have minimal nitrogen buildup and it allows you to make mistakes without too much reprisal. Trust me, it'll take a bit of practice, but it will pay off. The goal is never perfection though. The goal is boringly predictable ascents that feel the same every time, and confidence to make those ascents. And once you achieve that, your brain frees up for other things like navigation, buddies, and the actual diving you came to do. And if you're enjoying this video, now's a great time to like and subscribe so other divers can see it as well. I post weekly content to help divers grow their skills, build confidence, and explore the ocean with curiosity and care. And by the way, I have a monthly newsletter that goes into some diving tips and the latest and greatest in the scuba industry, and it's free. Check it out in the description below. Okay, let's talk about some other refinements, starting with suit squeeze. It is expected and manageable because pressure compresses the gas in your suit and collapses your insulation. The fix is to add just enough gas to restore loft and mobility and then stop. Practicing the other skills mentioned earlier will help you start understanding how much gas you need in your suit to feel warm and comfortable. If you're feeling cold and shivering, it's often a symptom of not enough gas in your suit. Think of it as reactivating your undergarments rather than inflating a balloon. Undergarments change how much gas you need more than most divers expect. A thicker loft stays warm only when you feed it enough gas to keep it from flattening. Thin layers need less gas but offer less warmth and may allow more squeeze to pinch your skin in odd places. Whenever you change layers from summer to winter, thin to bulky, recalibrate the amount of suit gas you need. Moisture management matters a lot more than you think too, because damp layers steal heat fast. Sometimes suiting up too early and waiting on something to happen, maybe other divers in your team, causes you to sweat in your suit. And that sweat will make for a very cold dive. So that's why it's important to have moisture wicking material next to your skin, and that helps a lot in that regard. Favor synthetic or merino base layers that move sweat away from your skin rather than cotton that stays wet and cold. And tri-laminate dry suits in particular have inherent insulation and rely almost entirely on what you wear underneath. Compressed or crushed neoprene suits provide some insulation and buoyancy stability, but still need thoughtful layering and gas management. Ultimately, comfort is personal, and some divers accept a leaner squeeze for stability, while others prioritize softer feel for warmth. Neither path is wrong if you can freely move and manage the bubble without wrestling it. I aim for a middle ground with enough loft to stay warm and a small, well-behaved bubble. Oh, and one more thought about using your BCD primary to control your buoyancy and Drysuit only for warmth is that different agencies are going to teach this a little bit differently. And so again, use what you're comfortable with. And one important note there is that your Drysuit and BCD are two capable buoyancy control devices. So even if you're using your buoyancy control device primarily, it's probably good to practice using your Drysuit occasionally for buoyancy control. In the event that your BCD fails, you can still end your dive safely getting to the surface by using your Drysuit. So it's good still to practice using your Drysuit for buoyancy control as well. But I'm going to put that more as an intermediate skill and something to work towards than immediately jumping to it. It's nice to have a redundant buoyancy control. And I completely understand the philosophy that some agencies might have with basically using the Drysuit more as a buoyancy control device primarily. Getting comfortable with that can train you to manage even bigger gas bubbles in your suit that develop your Drysuit proficiency even more. It's not a bad skill to have, but in general, on normal dives, I see it as easier and safer to keep those roles of BCD and Drysuit distinct. Here's the bottom line to start getting over the hump of Drysuit demands. Lock in your buoyancy control, weighting, trim, and then getting used to managing that gas bubble. Before you know it, you'll be warm, in great trim, and be able to explore the ends of our planet, now being able to properly mitigate environmental and cold factors. Did I miss any important Drysuit tips that helped you when you were first mastering it? Let me know, and others, in the comments below. If you're looking to lock in that buoyancy and weighting, check this video out here next. And if you're looking to improve your trim, as I mentioned earlier, I have a great video for that here as well. The more you know, the more you'll love and protect the ocean. Until next time.